Long ball is going to go for a touchdown. The game's over. Webster Slaughter.
Metcalf will go for the score. Unbelievable.
45-40. Run, William, run. He's got blockers in front. 5. Touchdown. Joshua Cribbs turns disaster into a score.
Sight wants it all on this one for Logan, and he is there.
Jim Brown to the 30. Jim Brown is going to go in for another touchdown.
The Cleveland Browns select Baker Mayfield.
Wow. It is Baker Mayfield.
I woke up feeling dangerous.
Hello, Cleveland. Welcome to another episode of 1085 Gridiron. I am your host, Anthony Joki. I don't have Jack with me tonight, but I do have a very special guest with us. He is an analyst at the Orange and Brown Report, and he's the host of the Browns Film Breakdown podcast. He is Mr. Jake Burns. How you doing today, Jake?
Hey, I'm great, Anthony. How are you, buddy?
Oh, we're doing good. You know, obviously it's a very busy time around here. The season got underway. Unfortunately, on Sunday, as you guys heard in our post-game show, the Browns got a whooping. I don't think we really expected that. Jake, as you looked at that game on Sunday and watched it a couple times, what was your overall takeaways from the game on Sunday against the Tennessee Titans?
I guess I'd put it as an opportunity was just really missed. I thought that there was a game there that they could compete in against a good team. I thought they were on paper better. I think most of us leading up into this thought the Browns had, a bevy of advantages. I thought that wasn't out of the realm of most people's opinion. Was the advantages were there on paper, but Tennessee did a nice job of using a couple of different things. They used an overzealous approach from the Browns, which was a team coming out gung ho on putting, I guess, their emotion into the game and not going to be beat around or bullied. And when that happens, you get a team they're just playing really fast and geared up on emotion. And Tennessee offensively allowed the Browns to do that. And when they allowed the Browns to do that, they combated it with screens and different ways to take advantage of some of those overzealous approaches that Cleveland put out there, and they did it on both sides. They sat back and let the Browns sort of beat themselves offensively. The penalties are tough to talk about, because there was an undisciplined game, sure, but like undisciplined games are at like 8, 9, 10 penalties. Anthony, it's like they had 18. Man, it was just sort of an outlier. It's like the Browns were the fact that the Browns with 18 penalties, they gained, I think, 345 yards and almost lost 200 in penalties. The fact that this was even a game for 3 quarters is pretty fascinating. So, the further I get away from it, the less discouraged I am about it. I don't know how disciplined or how cerebral this team will end up being, but I do know that if we see an 18 penalty game again, I'll be absolutely stunned.
Yeah, when you're making predictions, I think one of the hardest things to predict, it's almost impossible really, is you can't predict penalties and you can't predict injuries. And for what went on Sunday with 20 penalties, there were a couple plays where they had 2, so it ended up being 20. But that it's just something you can't predict. And like you said, I would be stunned if they had more than 15 in another game this season. It's incredible that you just saw the constant yellow flags on the field. Very, very shocking from our perspective. But you did get to see how this offense can really click on 2 drives. The first drive of the game, and then a drive in the third quarter that made it 15-13. When you look at those 2 drives, give us a sense of, is that really what we could expect from this offense week in and week out?
Yeah, I think so, right? The script was good. I liked what they were doing. They were, that's one of the few drives they were staying out of penalties. They were staying out of penalties that crippled them. Although I should say there were 2 there were 2 big penalties. I'm an idiot. There was on the first drive there was the blindside block to Greg Robinson, which I just think is just a heinous rule. So that gets called. And then they make a throw to on that little scissor exchange route. They throw that ball to Higgins, and he almost scores So it took a big chunk play. And then if you look at that third quarter drive, they too had to make a pretty heroic play on a 3rd and 16, I think it was, after a holding call. Mayfield sort of ducks out of the pocket, scrambles left, and finds Landry. So you can't rely on those things. But other than that, I thought that they were on time and in rhythm. They ran the ball well. And for the most part, they didn't get behind the chains other than one time. The difference being they were able to find a way to get out of being behind the chains in those 2 scoring drives. So, most offenses can't overcome 1st and 20, 1st and 25, 2nd and 17, 2nd and 50. Those are they're tough. They're tough in the NFL because you become very predictable. Other teams can play, 4 pass rushers, 7 drop coverage guys, and just make you pick apart things and make you be really, really, accurate. And if you're relying on that, it's the margin for error shrinks. So I was talking earlier about, Tennessee just wanted to get ahead, make Cleveland press a little bit. And when they cut it to 15-13, then that screenplay goes 75 yards. All of a sudden, Cleveland's got to press a little bit going into the fourth quarter, and you can start to feel it. It's 22-13. You can feel that pressure building. You need to score here. We have to score here because we've got to score twice to win this game. And, that's when mistakes happen, man.
Yeah, I saw a statistic. I can't remember who had it, and if I can remember, I'll give proper credit. But there were 15 out of 19 first downs that the Browns had where they either ended up 1st and 10 or longer or 2nd and 10 and longer because of penalties or poor execution on a play. You can't have that happen. That number is egregious, and, when it comes to penalties or the terrible safety that they took, that stuff just can't happen. How were the Tennessee Titans able to mask their deficiencies on the offensive line versus the Browns, who we thought they were going to have to do the same thing, but were not able to? Yeah,
that's something I just wrote about for the OBR. They did 3 things. They shrunk line splits, so they made their offensive line play close together in tight proximity to give their interior linemen a chance to help each other out and keep each other from, if things leaked through in the middle of the offensive line, they were there, guard, center guard, were able to help them out. They did screen game and different varying types of screens to keep Cleveland on their heels about being upfield pass rushing, and then they chipped. They chipped a lot. They had Delaney Walker doing it. So they played 3 tight ends a lot. They played 12 and 13 personnel a lot with Jonas Smith, and then they have another kid. A funny name. I cannot remember his name, but they played 3 tight ends a lot, and they chipped with those guys. They chipped with wide receivers. They were just very patient. They didn't get many guys out in routes. They quick snapped on occasion so that the pass rush wasn't ready and set up, and they stayed out of really tough situations. Even when they were on deep third downs, it was they were 3rd and 10s, 3rd and 8s, and that was their plan. Their plan was to take advantage of Cleveland's aggression, take advantage of Cleveland's zealous nature, and use that to their advantage. There's some times where they just got beat up front and they didn't run the ball well. 3 quarters, though, the Browns, if you took the penalties out of the first 3 quarters, I'm not totally unconvinced that the Browns don't have a 2-touchdown lead. I think that they were able to do things. It's just a matter of, Tennessee was taking advantage of the Browns being behind the sticks offensively. And then, like I said, defensively, offensively for the Titans, they were playing it safe, keeping 9 guys in protection occasionally, and making sure a body was on Miles all the time and moving the pocket. So it was just a really good game plan to combat, I would say, a lack of superior talent. So it was impressive by Arthur Smith, that's for sure.
Yeah, and he's a first-year play caller. And let's talk about the play that pretty much broke the back of the Browns, and that was the screenplay. It was 15-13 at that point. And, the Browns just scored. You could feel the energy coming back in the stadium. And they go ahead and silence the Browns on that 75-yard screenplay that went for a touchdown. Tell us what you saw in that play. And was it just a play call that made that play so successful?
Yeah, so they ran they ran stretch left. So that's just outside zone where they're extending the football out and trying to run at an angle, a 45-degree angle, and sort of then a running back can take that ball and go. He can bounce it, he can bang it into a hole, or he can bend it back inside. So they ran that run scheme, but they play action bootlegged off of it. So imagine Mariota reaching out to his left and then bootlegging back the other way, which made the entire defense redirect. And then he drops it. He turns all the way back around and drops it back to Derrick Henry on the far left side. And there was one. Christian Kirksey was the only player there. He had a realistic chance at Henry before he started going. He took the outside route to turn him back inside, which was smart. A hold could have been called. Maybe he kind of goes low, and when he goes low, he gets hooked, and it could have been called, but it's 50-50 at best. And so he gets going, and there's just nobody there. Joe Schobert looks like he might have an angle on him. Nobody takes an angle. And that's the thing about Derrick Henry is, like, people talk about this in the NFL. He's deceptively fast. He's a huge guy, but he can run. And when he gets in the open field and is able to use his strides, he just flat out ran away from people. And I thought the backside pursuit was terrible. If you watch the film, if you have Game Pass, watch that film and you're going to see Denzel Ward sort of lethargically running from the backside, and then he turns it on and sprints way too late. He's actually out in front of Henry at the end, but A.J. Brown gets down the field and blocks him. But if Ward would have taken a sprinting angle the whole time, he probably stops that play. So that's disheartening, and I'm sure he should be embarrassed when he's watching film. But it was the right play call. Like, Tennessee ran 3 screens earlier in the game. I was talking to Brendan Leister about this, that were they were there for the taking. They dropped it early in the first possession. They dropped one. They dropped Deion Lewis dropped one that would have been a first down, and then there was a tight end screen that they were running. If you remember the Morgan Burnett sack off the backside, he came through untouched. That was a tight end screen they had set up for a big play, and then they missed one more screen to Henry. They missed early in the third quarter, and I could just, when I rewatched the game, I could see what the Titans offensive staff was seeing, which was like, we're right there with one of these screenplays. We just have to hit it. You have to catch it. You have to get the throw off. And it was right there for the taking, and they finally hit one and caught the Browns in a little blitz. And, that's all it took, man. And Cleveland never really – they have not – over the last 2-3 years, this defensive roster, some guys who have been here for a little while, they don't feel screens well. They don't feel that I shouldn't – as a defensive lineman, you shouldn't – at any point when you're running free, it's like, it's too good to be true, man. You're not turned free like this. That's not a thing. They want you to come free, and they didn't handle it well. So, it was just a matter of time, and they caught him in it.
Yeah, as a former high school D lineman, I totally understand. When you're running free, you turn your head around because that ball is probably already behind you at that point. Let's switch to the Browns O-line. We'll talk about the 2 tackles here in a second, and, ended up being 3 or 4 on Sunday. But, a lot of negativity has been thrown at Eric Kush's way, and I thought, at least on Sunday, he played a pretty good game. Is that what you saw as well?
Yeah, I thought he played fine. He had a couple little mishaps. I think he graded out in the mid-60s. He better pass blocking than run blocking. That's kind of what we knew was coming from him. So if you're looking at where the issues were on the offensive line, you don't have to look at Eric Kush. I thought he played well enough to not be labeled a problem in that situation.
All right. Obviously we had the ejection penalty from Greg Robinson. Was forced Kendall Lamb in there. He got hurt. They moved Chris Hubbard from right tackle to left tackle. Then they had McCray, who they picked up from Green Bay, play right tackle. When they made that switch, how did those two play at those 2 spots towards the end of the game?
Justin McCray was not very good, but what do you expect? I mean, the guy hasn't played right tackle since 2017. He played it for Brian Bulaga when he got hurt with the Packers. So he was okay. He had some good. Hasn't had much work at Ruckle to not be as effective as he'd hope he'd be. Chris Hubbard had a bad game at both positions. So I don't have anything other to say. He was just bad, and which is unfortunate, because they need him to be relatively good. He can't give up 6 pressures in a game. He can't have 3 flags. So, I don't have anything other to say than that. He just wasn't very good, and he's going to need to be better at getting to the top. He stops. At the top of his drop, he has this tendency to stop, and it gets him beat to the high side, which you saw Cam Wake do him a couple times. So, it's got to get better, man.
Before the ejection, what did you think of Greg Robinson and the way he played for the first quarter?
He was fine. he was fine. I mean, he's better than McCray, and he doesn't force Chris Hubbard to go from right to left tackle. And but he was fine. He didn't have a great showing to start the first 20 snaps there he was playing, but yeah, I mean, I thought he was it's lame enough, but I thought he was okay. So he gave up a pressure where they had a really big shot play downfield, I thought, where Higgins made the corner turn the wrong direction, and they could have hit a skinny post, but Robinson misses his block there. Left tackle gets beat inside, and then Nick Chubb has to step up and help. And when he steps up to help, it ends up causing Baker not to feel comfortable enough to throw that football. So he was okay. He's Greg Robinson, mid-60s grade, good and bad, but he's certainly better than leaving McCray out there and moving Hubbard, like I said.
All right, let's talk about Baker. For the first 3 quarters, he played okay until he started forcing things and ended up throwing 3 interceptions, including a pick 6. I know there's offensive line issues, but did you get the sense rewatching it that he was kind of bailing from the pocket a little too quickly?
Mayfield? No, I not necessarily. I don't think that I watched it back. I didn't get the vibe that he was leaving too soon or leaving uncomfortably. So, no, I wouldn't say that. I would say that happy feet are going to naturally happen when you're playing, behind 2 people that normally don't play those positions and some of those. But I wouldn't say that he was leaving the pocket early or any of that stuff. I didn't get that vibe at all.
Going through those. Talk about those 3 interceptions that he had. Obviously, he was forcing the ball. Is this something when we get down that he's going to have the tendency to do, trying to force extra, or is there a way to almost control him to make sure that those throws don't happen?
So the first interception was just a ball he left inside. I didn't think he forced it. I didn't think it was a bad read. I just think he left it inside. It was a bad throw, inaccurate throw. Had Odell open in the window. The other 2 were just like the third one was a fluke. It got tipped and landed in Malcolm Butler's diving. It was just really weird. Kind of everybody, it seemed like, had packed that game in, and I'm not sure Mayfield should have been. And it was like he thought Landry was running a hitch out of the slot, but he ran a square in, and it was behind him, and it got tipped. Landry got a hand on it to tip it. But the second one, he just made a bad read. He just threw the flat route on 3rd and 4, and Logan Ryan was just hanging on Landry's flat route, and he forced it. He was graded above 90 through 3 quarters. He was playing phenomenally. I thought he was playing really, really well given the situation, and then just sort of made 3 really bad choices. The first throw of the game probably should have been intercepted. It was tipped right into the hands of I think it was again Logan Ryan or Dory Jackson. I'm sorry, it was tipped right into his hands. He didn't catch it, so it probably balances itself out to an extent. But I'm not too discouraged by the 4th quarter just because of the situation. The first interception bothered me. The other 2 were just, to me, kind of like frustration plays where the entire stadium was let down by the situation. You could feel it, and they, when it got to 29 to 13. I think everybody knew it was over, and Mayfield just made a couple error throws, a couple decisions that were just sort of like this game packed in. And that's just I feel encouraged about it. I feel like the way he's got to look at it and the way the Browns have to look at it is he played it lights out 3 quarters, 22 of 29 for 264 and a touchdown through 3 quarters. They just got to finish the 4th quarter. They got to play better in that 4th quarter and stay out in front of the sticks because there were more penalties that quarter too.
It's amazing, we talked about a little bit how the adversity that they had through 3 quarters, and it's still being that close early in the 4th, and they still had a chance before he threw that first interception. It's incredible, just the fight that they had, and unfortunately it just all kind of fell apart between the injuries, the penalties, and then the turnovers. So when you're looking at that, I'm very surprised that it lasted that long based on all the other factors that went on in the game. A little bit of the defense before we get on out of here. Just before the game, they announced that Greedy Williams was starting opposite of Denzel Ward. How did you think he performed in his debut?
He was fine. I mean, just like Denzel, I didn't think their corners. I didn't think Mitchell played very well either. To be honest, I didn't think they were just beat too easily. They played outside leverage, and they were beat too easily. And Greedy tackled a little better than I thought he would, but for the most part, he was covering tight ends occasionally. And there was nothing all too impressive on film. But he didn't break their back by any stretch. But it wasn't all too bad of a rookie start.
I think one thing that came to a shock to most of us is Jannard Avery being inactive. Here's a guy who performed really well last year as a rookie. Is it just that he hasn't found a place in C. Wilkes' defense yet, or is there maybe something more going on here?
I don't know. He was out a portion of camp with an ankle injury, and I would just look. I think your two defensive ends are different. One's a power guy, one's a speed guy by nature. But there's got to be a place for him. He's too good a pass rusher, and Freddie's answer today was a little weird in terms of it was the coach's decision, and they didn't give us any answer. And I think it's weird to me that they couldn't find a role for Jannard Avery to get 10, 15, 20 snaps a game, and I'm pretty disappointed in it right now. I hope it turns around, but right now as it sits, I'm disappointed in where that's all gone. And I know Jannard. I have a friend who's knows him, worked with him in college, and he was surprised by it. Jannard had no idea it was coming. He showed up on game day, and there was nothing in his locker. So he didn't even know it was coming. So I don't know where that's all going, but I'm quite interested to figure out what they're going to do, because if they fail to get that right, it's it's a pretty big problem if they can't figure that out.
It definitely raises an eyebrow when Chad Thomas is active and Jannard Avery is not. But he did play okay in the preseason, and you mentioned that Avery was hurt. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. All right, as we kind of look ahead to next Monday night, besides the penalties and those, what do the Browns need to focus on most during this week as they prepare for the New York Jets?
So what do the Browns need to focus on most? I really think they're sending the right message, which is we don't need to panic. I think they need to play better fundamental football. They need to be, sound in terms of how they play. They can't have you tear it off. You can't have some unsportsmanlike bullshit. You can't have Myles Garrett throwing a punch. You can't have Greg Robinson kicking people. And you just can't do that stuff. That stuff should be self-policed, and it should never happen, regardless of the Indianapolis nonsense or anything else that's happened. There's no reason to act like that. So you'd have to think those things are eliminated. They won't do it again. Then it comes down to what the other bullshit, which is holding. They can't hold. You have to know that if someone is coming outside of you, you have to know, and you have to have the right leverage. If someone's, aiming point is inside and the defense redirects outside, it's because somebody has bounced the football, and you just can't hold. Like, the holding stuff has to stop. They had special teams penalties again, a couple of those, which are just unacceptable. Look, man, I just don't see a way in which you can have that many penalties. Maybe they do, and if they do, that's a bigger indictment. Like, I need a bigger sample size. If they're going to be this undisciplined, they're just not going to win games. This, to me, right now, should be brushed off as a one-off until you see the sample size growing. So, my thought is it'll regress back to the mean. We'll see less penalties, and when you see less penalties, they'll have better offensive situations. They just need to execute up front. The Jets' defense is really not. Think about how to put this. The Jets' defense is not nearly as good as Tennessee's. They're depleted at linebacker. I know they're missing a couple. One towards ACL. I haven't studied them like I need to yet, but I know that Mosley's dealing with a groin. They might be down all three linebackers. So we're they have Jamal Adams and Marcus Williams who are good safeties, but the Browns have this is a better fit for who the Browns are offensively. So I don't think they're going to see as fundamentally sound a defense, as stout up front as Tennessee had. I certainly don't think they don't have the edge rushers that Tennessee's able to throw out there with Cam Wake and Harold Landry. So it'll be a lesser quality defensive opponent. So stay in front of the sticks, get some rhythm, and then put some pressure on Sam Darnold. If you watch the Bills game, and I've talked to some people who did, it's putting pressure on Sam Darnold pretty consistently and staying on top of Le'Veon Bell. And I think if you can have those things, keep those things in check. There's no reason for the Browns not to beat the Jets. Just there's flat out no reason. They're the better team on paper. They just have to take care of it. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think when you look at the schedule, besides a handful of teams like New England and whatnot, the Browns are the better team on paper. They just have to go out and prove that they are, not have any of this penalty stuff, and not turn the ball over. They're the better team on paper for most of the opponents that they have this year, and they should win majority of their games. If they continue like they did on Sunday, that's not going to be the case. All right, Jake, I appreciate you coming on, breaking this Titans game down with us, and go ahead and plug everything you got going on at the OBR and your podcast as well.
Yeah, man, I'm doing stuff at the OBR pretty frequently. Every day you'll find something. So Sunday you'll find 5 big plays that swing the game. Monday you'll find quarterback grade cards. You'll find a defensive, offensive study. You'll see that throughout the week, and then you'll get a Friday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. One of those days you will get a preview of the next opponent. So right now I'm working through a couple of those things. But yeah, that's there. And then obviously you can find my own podcast, Browns Film Breakdown, in the iTunes store too. So yeah, appreciate it, buddy.
As always, you can find me on Twitter at Anthony Joki, Joki. You can find the podcast on Twitter and on Facebook at 1085 Gridiron. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We absolutely appreciate it. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. With all that, Jake, I appreciate you coming on. And as we get on out of here, I'll leave you guys with this, as I do at the end of every episode, and that is, go Browns.